Hey, Kraft. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Hello.
Oh, all right. Good deal. I'm trying to connect a earpiece, but it's not quite working. So,
Can. Hello.
oh, all right. Good deal. I'm trying to connect a earpiece, but it's not quite working. So,
Can. Hello.
oh, all right. Good deal.
There's a weird echo.
Yeah. Weird. All right. Is that any better? I closed out YouTube. I had it open in the background. I think that was. All right.
I just realized we both had it open, so it was probably echoing both of
Yeah,
ours.
that's probably what it was. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if I can connect this earpiece. If not, I won't bother with it. But how you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you? And I can hear you great. So
Good deal. Doing all right. It's hot as hell here today, though. It's like 102. So
oof.
Getting into the summer.
What is the temperature here? I don't even know. I've been inside all day. 84 so far.
Oh, wow, there's a chat over here too. Oh, 84? You're not doing too bad then. Not bad at all.
Well, you're Arizona, is that
Yeah,
right?
it's gonna be probably 115 in the near future. So
yeah, slightly less hot over here than in the desert.
Yeah. Let me see if Tony's gonna come on or not. He probably knows more about StreamYard than I do. This is like literally the second time I've logged into it. So oh, my cat's going crazy over there. All right. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Feed the cat. Hopefully that'll keep her quiet for a little while at least. I want to see if I can share the screen. I'm sure I can. Let's see. Oh, wait, there we go. I think. All right. So you should be seeing my Twitter feed right now, I think.
On StreamYard, I only see your face. I don't have the YouTube.
Oh, let me see. Maybe, hang on. Let's see what YouTube looks like. Oh, there's Jeff. I'll add Jeff on here. You guys can.
Awesome.
Hey, Jeff. Let's see. Add. Hey, Jeff. How you doing, brother?
Hello.
Hey, man. Doing all right. I'm just messing around trying to get this working, quite honestly. I mean, it's working so far, but I don't know much about using StreamYard. So I think you guys, or the live stream, I think can see my Twitter feed, which was what I was trying to pull up. Let's see.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey.
No, it's just my face.
So is there a YouTube link somewhere?
Yes. Check my feed, or hang on. I can actually send it to you right now. I was hoping Tony's going to come on because he's probably better at doing all this.
I found it on your Twitter.
You got it? Okay. Good deal. I was hoping Tony's going to come on because he's probably better. My echo's back. All right. I was trying to see if I could pull up my Twitter feed. I wanted to pull up that post you had, Jeff, from I've been on about this all day. The three little alien. I'm going to call them aliens just because it's harder to say entities repeatedly. But the three little entities that were picking up their fallen comrade outside the bar. I thought that was.
Yeah, the Crystal Lake case.
Yeah. That was interesting. Where is it? Here it is. Sharing on. That's strange. Let's try this. There's Steve. Oh, we got 4 people. Hey, Steve, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
Yeah,
Oh, doing all right. Doing all right. Just trying to get all this, trying to get StreamYard to stream to share my screen, but it doesn't seem to be working. Strange.
This is a good little
Are you planning on like recording these and putting them out there, Tim?
Yeah, eventually. I haven't figured much of that out yet, but that was kind of why I was going to jump on and just kind of play around with it and see. I'm assuming it automatically records, but
It will be on YouTube anyways. Yeah, it'll be on YouTube.
Okay. Let me try one more time to stream, share my screen. That was kind of essential to the image.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it works out for you. I might use it myself in the future.
Yeah, we used to use StreamYard for our show, but they like raised the prices on it for stuff, and it just got to be ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, there were like 5 different plans you had to choose from. Let's see if this works. Just share my entire screen. Maybe that'll work better.
What's that with the sunset hour you were talking about, Jeff?
We used to use StreamYard, but like it went up so much in price to have like even just basic features that we stopped using it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have moved on from StreamYard because they've repeatedly kept like doubling the prices, like just to even keep like the basic features around.
It's weird. It says StreamYard is sharing my screen, but I don't see anything except my face. So,
Yeah, and I noticed people have been having some issues with like lag and stuff in the free version.
Weird.
Are there good alternatives?
Not really.
That's why
Not that's free anyways. Like what we started to do was we would just use Zoom and record it over Zoom and then upload it later after we edit it to YouTube. But that wasn't live. So some people will use a software called OBS, which is Open Broadcast Studio, and they'll do all the live streaming kind of like themselves. But again, like it's a much more complicated setup like that you have to get going. And it tends to also have echo issues. When I've been on podcasts with people that use OBS, like the echo and the delay was so bad, it's almost unlistenable too. So there's some difficulties with it.
So weird. I'm having no luck sharing my screen. That was like the one thing I wanted to make sure worked today. It says it's sharing, but it doesn't actually. It's just showing my face. Oh. Camera.
Andreas, good to see you, man.
Good to see you. We got a good little group here.
Yeah.
Yeah, off to a great start.
All right. Hey Jeff, can any of you guys, are you able to try the screen share option? Do you have that on your?
Yeah, can you see my screen right now?
No, I just see your face.
Yeah, that's because when you screen share, it's a separate window in the back room you have to put forward.
Oh. Okay. Share screen. I do this.
Does having two monitors make a difference?
Oh, wait. I think I see it. There we go. Oh, I see, Jeff, what you're talking about. I got you now, man. Yeah. Yeah, I had to add a separate person to the screen. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I just really wanted to, I was going to pull up the image of this little guy, and this was great. This is like what I love about UFOs, by the way. I'm overly probably cynical and jaded and maybe overly skeptical even sometimes, but this little thing with 1977, you got this guy leaving the bar and he finds outside near the alley. But I didn't read all the details. I actually was going to save a little bit of it for this conversation.
It was like a back alley.
Yeah. And let's see.
It's interesting that he's got that little astronaut-looking helmet.
Yeah,
we don't need crazy stories from bar patrons anymore because we have government employees that are just filling that slot.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait a minute.
Well, this case is cool because we actually have primary source materials on it. We actually have like the guy's like letter that he wrote, and these sketches are his own sketches of the case. So it's not a third-hand story we're getting from other people. Yeah,
and I didn't read the letter the guy wrote to Hynek, but I did see it. I had it on my phone. I was going to pull it up here, and it sounded, at least, I mean, like obviously he was fairly serious about this. It didn't sound like a joke letter, and immediately didn't sound like some kind of hoax thing, but
what's interesting to me is just the depiction. Clearly, whatever that looks like, it's like something that they would need to breathe in our atmosphere, and just, at least for that person, just unconsciously or consciously, clearly they need that to be in our atmosphere compared to other experiencers where they're just completely helmetless.
Yeah. Sure. The question of whether alien entities could breathe in our atmosphere never seems to consistently be.
His letter does say he reported it to the police anyway, so he felt it was serious enough to call the cops.
Can I just an observation, because something you hear a lot is we should listen to experiencers, and that's like how we're going to get true disclosure, or how we're going to learn the truth. But this is a perfect example of where if you just listen to experiencers, you're never going to get an agreed upon answer. That's contradictory answers. It's a clusterfuck. And so, like, for example, if you want to get an answer to can they breathe in our atmosphere, this experiencer would probably suggest no. Other people's experiences would say yeah. And so without some means by which you can arbitrate between the two, you're left at square one.
Yeah. Probably some creativity in regards to, well, they're not biological entities, or they're all that kind of stuff. But sure, yeah, it's I'm just reading he indicates one of them seemed to be hurt, was laying on the ground. I mean, of course, to me, the funniest thing is he's leaving the bar, and you find someone laid out outside a bar or near a bar, or we could obviously speculate about what might be going on outside the bar while you have 2 or 3 entities tending to one fallen comrade. I don't know. Sorry, my cat's over here going crazy.
Yeah, David was 6 or 7 drinks of beer into his night, apparently at this point as well. So he had been drinking, and this is one of those cases that they call that they say has the Oz factor, because he describes like the environment in which this case happened as being kind of really strange. He felt like he was in a vacuum and he couldn't hear any sounds like from around him, the cars, the noises, the environment. He kind of felt like he was out of place. And so this is what Jenny Randles would call an Oz factor case as well.
Yeah, that definitely stood out. And that's always been certainly an interesting thing to me, that aspect of it. I wonder, how much of that is
being drunk.
Right. Or being surprised or shocked, or if you wanted to use the term traumatized, that I don't know how often that's actually applying, or in this case, but how much of it is a psychological phenomenon as opposed to something that's being imposed or anything like that by technology or something, right? I don't know, but that was certainly an interesting aspect to it.
Jeff, this might be a good question for you. Bendy on the comments asked, why do you think so many people claim to see such alleged entities in black suits?
I mean, I think just culturally, one, like we've always put people in suits that go on missions, like in space or underwater or whatever. And so we've seen that in movies and television and even sci-fi going back to the day, and just in real life, like that's what we've always done. So I think people have a tendency to assume that they'd expect these beings to be kind of in like suits and uniforms of some kind like that. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but somebody said, yep.
Do you happen to know if it's a cyclical thing that happens with cases like these? Like some decades they seem to reappear with suits and some others don't, or is it just like mixed throughout history?
Well, I mean, these days there's not really a whole lot of humanoid kind of cases that you get reported like anymore. I mean, to be honest, people still claiming to be abducted, but you don't even hear about abduction cases that more. But back in the days when these humanoids cases were really coming out in the 60s and the 70s, it was pretty common that these entities wore some kind of like coverall or a suit of some kind. Either sometimes it was silver, sometimes it was just black, sometimes it was other colors, and they didn't usually have helmets. Helmets is more rare. Not as many cases had the helmets like these guys did, but the whole them wearing some kind of suit or coverall, I think, was pretty prominent in many of the cases that we got from the 60s and 70s.
I think the aerial school kids sketched them with black suits as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, which Gordon Reed has put forward an hypothesis that it was traveling puppeteers. And if you do look at some of the costumes that these people were wearing, these traveling puppeteers in South Africa at the time, they almost looked like aliens. They were large, kind of like black, kind of like robes with like spindly heads and arms. And like you could, from a distance, you could think that was possibly an entity wearing a suit.
Yeah, I really appreciate Gideon's work. He's one of my favorite follows. I don't know how it's a good possibility. I don't know how plausible that is as far as the troop goes. He hasn't been able to find a troop that was in that area at the time, at least. But as far as like the black suits go, it's important to note that like only a couple of the kids noted that like skin tight black suit, right? And I agree with Jeff that like it was much more of a common trope back in, say, the 60s and 70s, where it was also like commonly found in like just the culture and like sci-fi novels and stuff. And, people were scuba diving and stuff. And I just feel like it was part of like the culture up until the 70s for the most part.
The whole scuba thing is, people have drawn reference to that before, because a lot of these entity sightings, people have said that they look almost like they're wearing scuba diving gear and some sort of apparatus kind of like on their back. In fact, the Emilson Poland case, they kind of had a hunchback, and one of the theories is that it was actually Russian military people in scuba gear doing a test or mission operation kind of practice or whatever in the region that they actually saw. And if you do look at people wearing some of these like scuba gears with some of the apparatuses on the back, they do look like black things, which from a distance could look like a hump kind of on the back. A similar kind of case was the Loveland frog case, where you have these entities that kind of look like they had this hump kind of like on their back. And so people have actually drawn specific connection to scuba gear and these entities' outfits and what they wear.
I like the Mike Swords, the Professor Mike Swords. I can always tell his Sharpie work. You know, he's definitely
yes, the Swords markers. Like,
yeah.
I'll always recognize that handwriting. I can tell it's the Swords. It came from Swords collection.
I remember that's probably a decade ago now, but I interacted briefly with Mike Swords on his website when he was doing the Biggest Study blog. He may still, I guess it's still up, right? But we were conversing, you know, on the comments about something along, you know, similar entity encounter or something. And I think I asked him, I can't remember how this came up, but I referred back to something Carla Turner had in one of her books. It was kind of reminiscent, you know, and I asked him, what do you think about this? And he said, I don't give her much credence, which I found fair, but you know, at some point it becomes, how do you differentiate whose story deserves more credence than another? Or is it just based on the absurdity of the claim, or right? I mean, because Carla's stuff, you know, as all of you guys, I'm sure, are familiar, had some of the most kind of extreme claims, I guess, of, you know, abductees seeing humans being ground up in meat grinders and strange kind of things like that. But
is it really any more absurd than some of these other stories? You know, like a bunch of entities picking up a bunch of UFO nuts here picking up their drunk colleague off the ground to go back to space and drink more space booze. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was that the kind of implication of what had happened to that fallen one, or does he actually go into what he believes was going on there?
No, I just made that up.
I did see him say that he thought he looked like it was injured, and that was kind of what I was curious too. Is it just from the way he tells the story? Would you kind of assume the thing was they're picking up a drunk colleague, or is that just me reading in? But obviously, he's leaving the bar would leave one to think, you know, of the reasons you might see someone laid out outside a bar. But yeah, it's a fun story though, right?
And you also just can't help but wonder if there's just a totally prosaic explanation here that this guy was drunk. He encountered some other drunk people outside the bar that were helping one of their buddies off the ground. And, you know, this is the kind of story that he came up with in his head.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess like the tricky part is trying to understand why the misperception, because obviously alcohol is not going to make you fully hallucinate stuff like this. So were they wearing something generally weird, or like how does an experience like that get translated in a person's mind into this? I have no idea.
Here was a comment from BWP. I don't know if you guys follow him on Twitter. He had mentioned Tanner Boyle had written an article about this, suggesting that maybe I don't know how much of this is a joke or not, but suggesting that maybe someone had come to retrieve evidence of a crime, like a body from her. I need to find that article, but that was an interesting perspective. Maybe you dress up like a spaceman to carry out cleanup of your prior mafia hit or something. I don't know.
Well, and maybe there's not a misperception here. Maybe it was just a bunch of guys with some costumes on having fun, like drinking out at night. Like when I was younger, I used to sometimes dress up and go out and have fun with my buddies, like, and dress like a weirdo. So, you know, it could just have been a bunch of goofballs, you know, dressed up like sci-fi for the night.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I thought. That, or like maybe there were other substances involved too, like, you know, that we don't know of besides alcohol.
Yeah, that could certainly be.
And
of course, go ahead, Jeff.
I just saying he had recently lost his job or something, and so he was out drinking. And
did he mention that? I didn't see. Did he say that?
Yeah, it said it on one of the letters. Yes, the letter by Broga says he had recently been laid off, and so he decided to go to a hotel to meet some old colleagues to talk about it. They spent several hours there drinking and drank approximately 6 or 7 beers. So where were his other friends, though? You know, if he was with all these colleagues he was drinking with, where were they? How come nobody else saw this? Did he just leave by himself?
And
let's see where the bar was.
It's in Illinois, some Crystal Lake, is that
Some
right?
hotel in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Yeah.
Cool. Better that than running into Jason.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Crystal
like-
Lake. Yeah, took me a second. Yeah, I got you. That's fun. Yeah, the of course, yeah, I guess it could of course be literally almost anything, right? That happened there, and it's
Okay, and so this was his birthday,
huh.
or the night of this guy's birthday. So he was out celebrating, I think, too. His birthday was June 13th. So
and
this
no
was,
one else saw this outside of an open establishment.
yeah.
And then the story is still around, what, 50, 55 years later or whatever. It'd be interesting to know what that guy said later, if he was however long he lived, or if he by some chance were still alive now even. But
Was this to Hynek, did you say earlier?
Yes.
there was a letter to Hynek in there, yeah.
Yeah, handwritten letter to Hynek that he wrote. Yep.
There it is.
Do we have any records of what people like Hynek thought of cases like these, either private entries or officially?
I think he was originally a little skeptical, but I think his views had kind of started to change on some of these occupant cases by this point in time, to where he took them a little bit more seriously. I think by the time he had Kufos, and when he was obviously coming up with the whole close encounter schema of things, he had started to believe there was some seriousness to these cases and that we should pay attention to them. But as far as that's something that I've talked about before, is that it's a shame we don't have a lot of follow-up on these cases, like going and looking at these guys decades later, if they're still around, and asking them, hey, what do you think about this now that it's been so many years? I think that would be really, really fascinating. Unfortunately, when I've tried to do it myself, when I've tried to track down some of these old people, a lot of times they'll either end up dead, or I'll find prospective people on Facebook and I'll send them a message like, hey, I think you might have had a UFO sighting. Can I ask you some questions? And I never get a response back from them. But it would be nice to hear from some of these people if they were still around.
It would be also, if you ever managed to get a hold of one of them, without showing them the original way that they reported the case, asking them to re-describe from their recollection the entire experience from scratch, so you can kind of see the degradation and all the stuff that happens memory-wise in the span of decades, and then compare and contrast, and maybe even they would be interested to see them side by side, just to see how memory drifts over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I would do. Like when I initially send out these messages, I don't really say anything more than like, are you the person that on this date might have had a UFO sighting in this location? And like there was a case here locally. I figured, hey, it's my town. Maybe I can track this person down. And the lady, the main witness, the mother, had died back in the 90s. But the children that she was with when they supposedly saw this were still around. And I messaged them on Facebook. I'm like, are you the same such and such that saw a UFO with their mother? And again, I haven't got any responses. But if I do ever get a response, that is absolutely how I'll handle it. So I can see what they remember now without being prompted with old information.
Some of you guys may have heard the interview that the guy Martin Willis from Podcast UFO did with is it Cody that witnessed the triangle or the pyramid UFO with the burns in Texas with I'm trying to remember their names.
Cash Landrum.
Yeah. There was
Colby.
an interview with him. This was maybe a decade ago or ish now, but obviously the event had been 30, 40 years prior. But the kid could barely describe anything that seemed to have occurred. He just used a couple of kind of terms of, a fiery triangle or something he kept saying, but he didn't really seem to have much recollection of it. Honestly, it was kind of interesting.
How old was he when it actually happened?
He was like 6 or young. He was like really young.
He was 7.
Say 6 to 10, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was 7 years old, and it's interesting because initially, you're like, he didn't even remember much about it or the shape and stuff. And initially, they didn't remember the shape either. Like the shape gradually grew from what was initially just a light in the sky. And then eventually it became that Colby said it was triangle shaped or diamond shaped. And even in like later interviews, the women said, they didn't really see the shape, but that the 7-year-old boy saw it. And it was just repeated after that. But yeah, they never saw a shape or anything beyond the light in the sky in the initial report.
This is what happens with so many cases, though, right? Like if you look at, like we were talking about this in book club yesterday with Jack Burr's book club about the Betty and Barney Hill case, and how if you look at the letter that they initially sent Donald Kehoe within a week of the sighting, it's a bit of a different story than what the public knows now as the Betty and Barney Hill case. There's no abduction or any of that stuff. That narrative wouldn't develop for a couple of years after they've had time to process it and whatnot. And when you actually, that's why primary sources in this topic are so important, because so many times when you look at the original reports, they don't really match up with what you're being told in the UFO books or in the UFO documentaries that you later hear. That story has been cultivated by ufologists to be entertaining for the masses and not necessarily reflect the truth of what really happened.
If you correct me, for her, was it nightmares that started happening afterwards, which she then went to a hypnotist to try to, work on? And is it after that hypnotic regression that the story, a variation of what we know today, happened?
I think that's generally it. Yeah. Initially it was some dreams she was having, which I think Ben Simon, the psychiatrist, eventually said he thought that she had shared with Barney, even if inadvertently. And that was maybe how they had gotten on somewhat of the same page, although even when you listen to their accounts from hypnosis, Barney was pretty much knocked out the whole time, or whatever you want to call it. So he's already, what would you call it? Kind of taken out, his agency is taken out of the story, if you want to say that. So then you have, Betty giving her perspective and Barney just kind of almost on the periphery, right?
Yeah, that's essentially what happened. She had been having dreams and whatnot that she had been sharing with Barney. A guy actually from the Air Force, I believe when they went to tell their story at the Unitarian Church, or one of the very first meetings where they told their story to a group of audiences, there was a guy at the Air Force that actually recommended they go see a psychiatrist and go into hypnosis. And then they went and saw Benjamin Simon, and he put them under hypnosis. And like one of the things we were talking about, how his Benjamin Simon's own perspective on the case has been distorted over the years. People have presented that he came to kind of believe that maybe they were abducted, but that was never his opinion on it. He'd always thought that it was Betty's dreams, and that she told the dreams to Barney so many times that Barney kind of took on the dreams for himself. And then that's what came out like in the hypnosis. And that was always his view on the case from the beginning, despite the fact that John Fuller in his book and other people don't really make it sound that way.
Yeah. I mean,
like this guy had a stated position, right? And it didn't matter. Another version of what he allegedly said, believed, prescribed to, and this just quickly made the rounds and just became the truth, right? It's really wild how often that happens around here.
Yeah, and I mean, from the moment that she shares even the first nightmare with Barney, anything that happens under regression is automatically already tainted and poisoned, because whatever the unconscious expects to come up is what's going to come up. And if you've already told the unconscious essentially what happens in your dreams, that's what it's going to. I hate to use the word, but the unconscious sometimes LARPs under hypnosis. It just does whatever is expected of it, or answers the way that you expect it to answer. And so if you've already got a story that you've kind of seeded it with, that's what you're going to get.
And of course, Benjamin Simon here actually got a big chunk of the royalties for the book that Fuller did on the whole case.
Really? I didn't know that. Huh.
Yes, a significant chunk went to Fuller. The other chunk went to Benjamin Simon, and it makes sense. A large part of this book are just the transcripts of his hypnosis sessions. And then the other chunk went to Benny and Barney Hill. So everybody made a decent profit putting this book out here.
Are those just transcripts from that case?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see how he does it discuss or have a transcript of the hypnotic inductions themselves, or just what they say after the hypnosis?
That's a good question. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't. So it's like, you are deeper and deeper asleep, deep asleep. You will remember everything now, and you will tell me everything. So stuff like that.
Okay.
Simon was very forceful. I saw a couple of clips of him working with veterans, and he was very, I don't want to say confrontational, but very controlling in regards to how he. This was, I don't know if any of you guys read this, but this was David Halperin's book, Intimate Alien, which had some good stuff on Betty and Barney as a more of a psychosocial perspective. He goes a little bit into Barney's recollection that the aliens were testing his teeth or were trying to pull his dentures out or Betty's dentures out. I can't remember who had the dentures, but related that back to practices that would occur during the slave trade sometimes when they would check teeth of slaves, and anyway, it was very, very interesting. Very interesting. I'd like to actually talk to David Halperin sometime. He might be a good person to have on if we could ever get him on and have a conversation with him,
I'm sure he would. He's been on with a lot of people, including Jeff. I think you guys had interviewed him at one point, didn't you? Or was that the Invisible Night School?
No, I think that was Invisible Night School.
Yeah, Luis interviewed him. A bunch of people have. He's great, man. I love David.
Yeah.
Something you just mentioned about it sounded controlling. So at least in the 70s, that's how most hypnosis was done. It's called directive hypnosis. Until Milton Erickson came along, and the school called more permissive style hypnosis came along. But that directive hypnosis comes from David Ellman and stage hypnosis, where you tell the person what you want them to do. Obviously, for stage hypnosis, that's fine. But from a hypnotherapy point of view, you don't want to be barking commands. Obviously, not very therapeutic. So what the way that he was telling them, you will do this, that tracks with how hypnosis was done back then.
There was a clip of him that I had previously. I don't know if I could find it now, but he was in some old military documentary where they were showing guys recovering from what they were calling shell shock at the time. But it showed him doing some hypnosis with a.
This is another good book that people should, if they want to know about Betty and Barney Hill, The Encounter at Indian Head, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Abduction Revisited by Carl Flock and Peter Brooksmith.
Okay.
It's the conference that I believe Firmage paid for to look at the Betty and Barney Hill case. So it's got like papers by all sorts of people in here, like Martin Cottermeyer and Peter Brooksmith and Thomas Ballard, Marcelo Truzzi, Dennis Stacy, Robert Schaefer, Walter Webb. So it's a great collection of papers from that conference. It's kind of a must read if you're interested in the health case.
See if I can silence this. I think this is the clip, but I'm see if I can cut the audio off so I'm not. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there it is.
Jeff, would you be willing to type up the names of any books that you mentioned that you recommend, like either in a comment or somewhere, so that I can pick them out later?
Yep. This is also Alien Abductions by Terry Matheson. Creating a Modern Phenomenon, focusing on the popular works of Bud Hopkins, John Fuller, Whitley Strieber, David Jacobs, and John Mack. It's another kind of.
Now, guys, is this? Now, I had looked this up previously, and I came to understand this actually was Ben Simon. I think, right, doing this.
The guy in the uniform.
I believe so. We can hopefully.
Better then.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to say.
All right, now walk out here. Walk over to the nurse all by yourself. That's the boy.
Hopefully they don't kill our YouTube here already with me copyright strikes or anything. But it is from 1946, so.
You're just a little wounded. That's the medicine. Now come back to me. Come back to me. Open your eyes. That's the boy. Isn't that fine? Isn't that wonderful? Sure. All right, now again, once more. Yeah, but how long will it be? Oh, it's going to stay that way. It's going to stay because that's taking care of your worry now. All right, now come on back to me, and I'm going to let you go to sleep. When you wake up, you'll keep on walking perfectly well. How about it?
Thanks, sir.
Righto. All right, now let's get up in here and we'll go to sleep. Yeah, there you are. Now I'm going to have you go right to sleep. When you wake up, it'll be all right.
Thanks.
All right, sleep, Girardi.
The fact that he can walk now does not mean that his neurosis has been cured. That will require time. But the way has been opened for the therapy to follow.
Yeah, I'll have to double check that, but I did look that up before, and I do recall. I think that was actually Simon doing that.
Now, you guys actually being mental health professionals probably know this more than I do, but wasn't Simon really kind of one of the early promoters of using hypnosis for trauma, people that have suffered from trauma and PTSD and whatnot?
Yeah, back then they would have called it shell shock. I know Freud did what he called hysteria. That was the other name for PTSD.
Right.
Because I know Simon was in the newspapers and in the news and on TV, like doing demonstrations of like his using hypnosis to help people with trauma. Like, so I think at least had a pretty prominent public figure at the time, like promoting the use of hypnosis.
I think especially in regards to post-war stuff for that, again, that quote unquote shell shock recovery. I think he was big in terms of kind of bringing it into a science medical model, perspective. But I want to jump in sometime when you guys do the reading group too, Jeff. I keep forgetting what days you do it on, but that would be fun to.
Yeah, it's Jeff has Wednesdays at 6 o'clock.
Wednesdays, okay. Yeah,
Wayward Wednesdays. You should definitely come in. It'd be a great addition. There was also a cool paper that was written back in, I think it was 2008, about the Betty and Barney Hill thing. It was called, Alienated Histories by David Drysdale. And he talks about like the racial aspects of the case, and like the overall like theme of race being a concern in alien abduction genres in general. But it was another interesting, I think, take on the case.
I do remember that paper.
He wrote a paper in 2008, called Raciology of Missing Time and the Interrupted Journey. Yeah,
there you go.
And David Halpern, in the book that Tim recommended, talks about that quite a bit, at least a Jungian kind of interpretation of the abduction experience through the lens of racial politics back then.
So does the guy named Christopher Roth, is like an anthropologist. He has a paper, UFOs as Anthropology, Race, Extraterrestrials, and the Occult. And he's kind of addressed that topic quite a bit. There's also another
while
paper.
We're on it.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say there's another paper that was published in recent years that compares alien abduction narratives to the slave narratives, transatlantic slave narratives. That's kind of interesting. I think that paper is called Alienation and Aliens, a comparative study of narratives.
I wonder
I'll have to check that one out. I don't think I'm familiar with it. But also, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Charlie Weiser's excellent blog, The $3 Kit, where she looks at the case. I thought she did a great job of piecing a lot of the evidence together and noting that there was a, observation building or whatever on top of one of the mountains that they were driving past that was, short, squat, round, pancake shaped that would have had people walking in it and it would have been lit up, at night. So just another possibility for some of the things they could have seen that night.
I remember Stan Friedman once told me that, and I did read this later. I don't remember many of the details, but that there was some sort of radar return that was supposedly could be, if you were generous, correlated with that evening. I don't know what.
Yeah, there is a radar return from Peace Air Force Base, I believe, at some point in that evening. But again, like that's the problem with tying. Like you have an event and then you try and find other things. Is that like, is there really any reason to connect this event to this event, or are you just kind of like putting them together because they kind of vaguely, go around each other?
Yeah, it's funny because those claims of radar evidence are like still today so prevalent, but they were part of like every case eventually, whether it be Rendlesham or Cash Landrum or this one. Like there was always claims of alleged radar evidence, which of course never ever materialized.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where you kind of already know the bullseye and then, or you know where they landed, and then you sketch out the bullseye around where the knives already kind of landed. Like you just look for any evidence after the fact. Any association could be made to fit.
This is essentially what I think like Robert Powell and MUFON and whatnot did with the Stephenville, Texas case, where people recall this is a case where people made a big deal because George Bush has a ranch in the area or something, and there was a UFO and there was F-16s or whatever chasing after the UFO, and so MUFON went after the radar information for the area, and so they got back like a CD with literally millions of just spurious radar targets. And they go in there and they hand pick the ones that they think fit along the match of where the UFO was and use that as confirmation. But it's like, but you just ignored the other 2 million that are all around the area that you didn't pick out either. Like you just picked a trail where you expected one to be and called it good and act like that was confirmation. But no, you already had a conclusion and you're just picking the data that you needed to match your pre-existing bias.
I guess Obama's coming out with, or he's producing, right, a Netflix movie or documentary about the Betty Barney Hill thing, which will be kind of interesting to see how much of the circle.
Is that still happening? It's been kind of in the works for years.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything in the last couple of years about it, but I don't know.
I just heard it come up again when Disclosure Day came out. Speaking of, I haven't seen it yet. I'm not too big on it, but.
Well, and there's that movie or TV show coming out based on Toby Ball's, podcast on abductions with Demi Moore in it. And I think that Coleman Domingo guy, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to pan out, but I was a huge fan of Toby Ball's podcast, Strange Arrivals. One of the best ever.
Yeah, Strange Arrivals is what the movie, I guess, is going to be called, too. And I was on Strange Arrivals. He interviewed me. There's a brief.
Yeah, the name of the podcast is familiar, at least. Yeah. Let's see. Well, you guys have other stuff any kind of topics you want to hit? You can go for a little while. I didn't really have too much of a plan.
So I was working all day, so I have no idea what came out in the release today. Was there anything new at all, at the very least?
So, of course, I have already taken the opportunity to go through every single page of every PDF that they put out there today, because I had nothing else to do.
I believe it.
And so, as far as like the document portion goes, again, a lot of it was old stuff we already had. There was a couple of files from the FBI that contained UFO sightings from Washington State that they had gotten over a period of years that I haven't seen before. There was also a file from their Newark, New Jersey office of, again, some sightings over a period of years that they got reported there. By and large, though, it's kind of similar to the previous releases, documents that we've largely seen before. Perhaps they're different kind of copies of the same documents we've seen before, or with a slight redaction removed or something. But for the most part, there really wasn't anything in this new drop. All the video files were, I guess, essentially from the same guy, one guy that constantly believes he's seen orbs, around where he lives, that the FBI found, as Mick West pointed out, the FBI found credible, but these sightings were already debunked and released over a year ago, and they were like, planes, Venus, etc., ISS, nothing really, remarkable. So it seems like this release, they kind of were just scraping at the bottom of the barrel of what kind of like garbage they could dig up that they still had that they could put out this week.
Now, was it you who posted on X a 1953 document that's still classified? Did you post that, Jeff?
Which document?
So there was, I think it was you. I'm not sure. So there was a 1953 document, and the caption was something along the lines of, "I can't imagine."
Okay. Yes, so that was actually from they put out a copy of the Robinson's panel report again in this new release, which again we've already had, but there was like a couple pages in that PDF that had like a big orange or pink sheet or whatever that said this has been removed for whatever private security reasons or whatever, and it's being held in this CIA file box somewhere, and it's insane to me that a document that's over 70 years old now that has to do with UFOs has any pages that they need to redact or remove from the file at this point.
What do you suspect that I think I asked John Greenwald this once. I don't think I ever got a response, but it was something along the lines of, what is the oldest document that you know of that is still classified?
Well, I mean, they still remove names of like officers and people like, from these files, like even if they're 70 or 80 years old. I mean, I personally can't imagine a reason for it. They're long dead. But I guess when it comes to certain cases like the CIA, for example, or even like the FBI, they'll still keep those people's names private, even if they're dead. Like, unless, for example, sometimes if you can provide them with like a death certificate or proof that that person is dead, then they'll go back and do a mandatory reclassification review and release more information. But a lot of these times, the people doing these FOIA requests, it's not like they're out there checking to see if people are dead or are not dead. And so they'll err on the side of safety and still just censor stuff out that really doesn't need to be censored out.
So that would explain some redactions, right? Would that typically sometimes also include an entire document itself being classified, or just redactions?
I mean, if the document itself contains so much stuff that it would be so heavily redacted that there's no point putting it out. But then you have documents like the Disclosure Foundation recently released a FOIA response they got back. That was back in the late 1970s, early 80s. An organization called CAUS, C-A-U-S, Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, was filing FOIA lawsuits against the NSA, the CIA, the DIA, trying to get documents out of them. So the Disclosure Foundation put in a request to see if they could get some of those files re-released again, like with less redactions. And if you actually look at the files that they've uploaded to their website, it's just like whole pages blocked out. Like there's almost nothing in this. It's like 300 pages of almost nothing, because like just the whole pages are just big blocks, just like gone. And I personally can't see the reason for that, but the government apparently does.
Yeah, some of the stuff they're dropping out is just. Sorry, I'm kind of straying a little bit away from the question about the oldest, but just some of the crap they're dropping is just it's obviously unvetted, and they've made no attempt to try to figure out. In some cases, they didn't seem to even care to try to figure out what it was. Just wanted to drop it into a batch of files, right?
Or even care enough to drop it in a way that people could sort through it. It was just like, here, blang.
Yeah, well, all these files that are being released it's all comes from that 2024 NDAA that was signed back in December 2023, that basically mandated all these government organizations to go dig through all their archives, find all the UFO stuff, and forward it on to the National Archives in Washington, D.C., so it can be processed for release. Most of the stuff that has been released over these last couple of trenches was actually approved for release last year, and it was supposed to be uploaded to the website, the NARA website, over a year ago. But for whatever reason, the Trump administration has decided to hold these files back instead of putting them on NARA, and the same files that were already going to be released, with or without Trump saying anything, have now just gone up on the war.gov website. But they're essentially just unprocessed collections of files that these organizations have dumped over to NARA. Like there's no it's not like a curated collection of high quality sightings or information. It's basically just the same stuff we've already had for the last 80 years.
And he's taking credit for it now.
Yeah.
Do you suspect there is better stuff? Because that's obviously the immediate conspiratorial move. They're holding the good stuff behind closed doors. I mean, it's just as plausible in my mind that this is as good as they have. Obviously, they have better sensor data, better videos, possibly Chinese aircraft. But I suspect the obvious reason is this is what you get when there's no reality to the phenomenon. Do you think that they are holding on to anything interesting behind the scenes?
I personally, I do not. And I think there's good reason to believe that they're not, because if we look at it, if we look at what these politicians have told us about the stuff that they've seen, that they've said was like groundbreaking, earth shattering, I can't sleep at night, it made me cry. And then we get the actual videos of the crap that they've seen, and it's not earth shattering, it's prosaic, it's uninteresting, it's a blurry blob. And so the stuff we've been getting, that we know we've been getting, is the same kind of stuff that has been making politicians be like, oh, wow, there's something to this. Then I highly doubt there's anything better, to see out there. Like, for example, the release 2 files that we got contained a bunch of video files that was part of 46 files that Luna and Burchett and the UFO circus had requested from the government. And that's what we got in release 2. Was all
those
these
are the
files.
really good ones, I think, right?
Yeah, those are supposed to be the really good ones. A lot of the ones that Corbell had been keeping secret, buried in the desert or whatever on a thumb drive, like the ones that, like, if we saw, we'd be amazed. Like, and we got the videos, and they're not amazing. So yeah, I highly doubt there's really, as you point out, the government, isn't the most transparent. They probably got all sorts of stuff, like much more fancy sensor data, stuff like that. But I don't think it shows aliens, and I don't think they have better, like, fancier videos of showing UFOs, like in 4K, doing 90-degree turns with triangulated radar data. Like, I don't think that exists. I think we're finding out that the best of the best is the slop that we're getting.
I'm going to pull up in the background here on the screen. This is a video from Gulf Breeze that Bruce Morrison took back in 1992, I think it was. But this is kind of what I saw. It was the Gulf Breeze red light, which to me looked, and I think even in the video, to me it always looked like some kind of flare or pyrotechnic or something, just for the way that it, increased and decreased in brightness, and you'd see stuff occasionally dropping off of it, like something was melting or burning, or I'm just kind of surfing Twitter in the background that popped up. But
were you there for this specific?
Not that one. No, it was a year or two later. I was there for a similar thing, but not that one. Yeah.
Jeff, do you think that these politicians, when they claim that their minds were blown, what is really happening is the priming that is done before they see the video? There's a story that typically goes with a video of, this is what you're going to see in this video. And that kind of sets the template for how they interpret what they're looking at. And that feels far more amazing than without the priming.
Yeah. I think first of all, we have to remember our people in Congress are not the brightest tools in the shed, or the sharpest tools in the shed. And there absolutely is that priming. Take, for example, the video that supposedly was a UFO being shot into by a missile, and it was a balloon. But the whole narrative around it was that there was this unidentified object, and a fighter jet shot it with the missile, and it bounced off and went in 2 different ways or whatever. And they thought that video was amazing, but that video was not amazing. It was just a balloon being shot by a missile. So I think there's a lot of priming going on, and also again with the fact that they're just our people in Congress, particularly the people on this topic, are not the most critical, skeptical, intelligent individuals in the first place, and are easily moved by, not very good evidence and a good story.
I think they're also hyping it and selling it and sensationalizing it. You know what I mean?
Hey, I think there's a bit of both. There's them obviously taking advantage of it for political reasons, because it gives them a lot of traction. A lot of these UFO Congress people, quite frankly, you wouldn't really know who they are if they didn't have this whole UFO thing going on. Their whole reason they're in mainstream media all the time is because they're talking about UFOs and conspiracy theories. Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of both. They're definitely playing on it for their own benefit. But I think there's also an element that they can also be credulous believers in their own sense.
Yeah, real quick, I had reposted something the other day from Alex on Twitter, and he was just posting the publicly available stats for the representatives. And Burleson, for instance, 70% of his campaign donations have come from out of state, mainly like $50 to $75. And he made the good point that, like, most people wouldn't even know who he is if it weren't for this topic. And the minute he says, wait a minute, it's all bullshit, or, well, I don't know, as soon as he takes off the gas, like, the gravy train comes to an end. And a lot of these people, it's the same thing. I mean, Luna, she's a little more out there, but, like, who would know of Tim Burchett if it wasn't for this topic, right?
I actually looked up Burchett because I had a similar question. I'm like, I only know about him from UFOs. I'm like, how do people know about Burchett if it's not from UFOs? And I guess his initial claim to fame was him voting with Democrats against Republicans on something like years ago. And so he was a member of like 6 Republicans that voted on the other side about something. And so like that got him a lot of mainstream media attention at that time period. But I had never heard of that. And certainly in recent years, it's not because of that. It's all because of his interest.
Was it the Matt Gaetz kind of scandal? And
yeah, it was the Gaetz thing.
Yeah.
And was it Burchett? I didn't know this. I think it was Matt in the chat actually that had mentioned that Burchett's been in government since his like mid-20s, right? This is basically the only job he's ever had as a career politician. Yet he complains how he doesn't trust the government. Well, neither do I. And you're largely part of the reason, right?
Well, like I think Burleson, I guess is younger than I thought he was. I think like I'm as old as Burleson is. But like his entire career was like he claims he was a software developer, but this was like early 2000s. I think that basically means you did HTML on websites or your internal tech support. So like he was a low-level tech guy, and then he joined Congress.
I would have never guessed you're the same age at all.
Yeah.
Wait, so like me and Burleson are the same age? That's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess he's a few years older than me, but he's not like I thought he was older than he was. But yeah, he's 49, so he's a few years older than me.
Yeah, he's got a decade on me.
Yeah.
Damn.
But yeah, like absolutely, these people are exploiting the platform that it gives them, right? The front and center seats that they get for these hearings, which aren't really a big deal in Washington. They're certainly a big deal to a small subset. And I don't know, just like I think about the show The Tiger King and Carol Baskin and the laws that she could get passed and the things that she could get done in Congress when she had 20,000 signatures behind her name, right? Mm-hmm. That's just 20,000 signatures. I mean, you could easily get thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on a UFO, platform, paying attention, retweeting. I'm just saying that like the audience out there is really large. It's nothing to sneeze at.
And then maybe one of you guys even had mentioned previously that it's one of those things where there's not really much of a drawback in terms of there's not really a counter side to, I mean, how many of us, other than maybe a dozen people on the planet are heavily interested in something that they don't think is a huge issue in the same, right? I mean, there's nobody that's going to
push back. Yeah, skepticism is not really politically organized in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, even for the wider public, like there's every reason to lean into or embrace like the sensationalism and the mystery, and like almost every reason not to,
Yeah, and in this political climate, being into batshit crazy conspiracy theories isn't problematic for your political trajectory or career. In fact, if anything, it probably gets you more attention, and it's good for you to believe in wacky conspiracy theories. I mean, our whole administration is based on wacky conspiracy theories.
I did want to ask about the what was it, Wednesday? The what did they call it when they had the
press conference or
yeah. So what you guys thought about that, and also so when I looked at the document that Grush recommended people look at from Australia, it's from reading it, my impression was that there's 2 sources of information that document relies on. Number one, official U.S. government documents and releases, and then the other one was some mysterious database by Valet and I think it was Hynek. I don't understand what it is that Grush claims is of interest, such that people should look at that document. I'm curious what Jeff or you guys think. Is there something that I'm missing from there?
So, no, I mean, that document was by a guy named Harry Turner, who was quite literally, like a lot of these guys, just a UFO enthusiast that just happened to work for the government. And it goes back way before that document. Back in 1954, he tried to get the Australian government to like kind of start up UFO investigations based on a review he did of Donald Kehoe's book that he wrote up a thing for. That was like his initial kind of report. And, you know, they denied it. They came back like, yeah, nah, we don't think this is worth our time. And we're not sure we find, you know, Kehoe stuff all that credible. And so, again, to get 20 years later, he writes this other document, which again is just based on publicly sourced information, you know, UFO books. Oh crap, I'm bleeding all over the place. Publicly sourced UFO books, and it's kind of somebody else pointed out, it's kind of similar to like the Paul Hellyer thing in Canada, right? Like where you're just playing up on people's credentials, like this guy was a big nuclear scientist for the Australian government. There's something to this. But when you dig into it, he was just a UFO enthusiast using publicly sourced documents and information to come up with what he believed, and he wrote this kind of report on it. And it's an old report that's been out for a long time. It's been talked about and written about for decades. Like it's not particularly new information. So,
Do you think, Grush?
I didn't even read the thing you referenced, but you mentioned I think the Valet database. People are always going on about wanting that database, which is, my understanding, is just a conglomeration of other crappy databases, which were probably not really thoroughly vetted or researched. So now you've got a bigger pool of you know, data that's not, for some reason people are fascinated by. And I was, you know, 20 years ago as well. Like if we get more data, we could do some statistical analyses but I mean, I think this thing Valet has got, it's just, you know, he's just throwing together all these. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, that's essentially what Capella is called. Capella, and what it was is it's basically CUFOS had a database called UFO Cat that contained, you know, 100 something thousand sightings. He took CUFOS's UFO Cat. He took the database from Peter Davenport's National UFO Reporting Center. He took the MUFON database. So he took all three of those databases, and then they added the Dominique Weinstein's pilot catalog in there. And the few cases that Bass itself investigated got thrown in there. But by and large, it's like 99%, you know, just the same public UFO databases from the main large UFO organizations is all Capella is. And so people are like, oh, we need to get Capella. We need to get Capella. And while it's cool, I think they should just release Capella as it is. We've effectively got a lot of the data that's already in Capella. So, and as far as you were mentioning the PR junket that they kind of had this week, yeah, I don't think it really did anything. Like there's really nothing that really happened at it, right? So, and if you look at the pictures of the event, it was primarily the people that attended it was almost entirely media, or the people involved with the event, or their staff and entourage, or the people from 42 West, which was the PR firm that controls Leslie Keane and a few of the other people. And like, you can't talk to them unless you go through the PR firm. They were also there helping to wrangle ICE protesters, getting the ICE protesters out of the photo shoots at the PR event, because they didn't want those people protesting ICE in their UFO pictures, apparently. So if you look at this attendance, I think really you probably had a few people that came that lived locally, but it was the same usual suspects. It was somebody with a YouTube show or a podcast, or you know, they had like News Nation there, or some of these right-wing networks like Right Angle News, I think, was there. So they had some media there, but that was pretty much all that was there. And if you look at the crowd, almost everybody had a camera. So it was mostly media, staff, and entourage, and maybe a few people. And it didn't really move the needle. You had David Grush up there talk for, you know, a few minutes, where he talked about sentient plasmoids and other just random stuff. And it's just, it's the same people requesting the same thing, and I don't think it did anything at all.
I got a little bit of the impression of him busting out the intelligent plasmoids was because of the fact that he knew people didn't want to hear the same shit again, and there was plasmoids, right? Or I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know how reliable this is, but I saw Jay Anderson in a comment mentioned there were a total of 40 people there. 40. Also, it was interesting after that conference, Jason Sands was in a space, and of course, Jason Sand also has magically a story about plasmoids that he had never shared before. But of course, he has a story for everything, and it just seems like this is exactly how things get added to the lore. Because I don't think anyone was talking about plasmoids until this, and suddenly it just kind of takes a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, there was a paper a year or two ago that somebody put out about intelligent plasma life as like a possibility that the UFO community kind of like latched onto briefly. I remember looking at the paper at the time and I'm not being like too impressed with it. I seem to recall there's a book by Lawrence Krauss, like The Science of Star Trek, where he kind of goes over some of the various things in the Star Trek show and whether it's like physically possible. And he kind of like has a whole section on so-called like energy or plasma beings and how physically improbable or possible that kind of idea is. Like just the very idea that their energy means that like there'd be all sorts of relativistic effects like time-wise like going on, and how could you have like a life form that could like develop with all those relativistic, like it'd be very, very, very difficult. But again, after people started talking about sending plasmoids, people dug up that old NASA video of the tether in space, right? With the ice crystals like floating around it. And it was like, look, we had proof of this already. NASA already had this video and you can see the intelligent plasma like moving around intelligently. And it's like, I think a lot of what they're interpreting as intelligence is just like there's perhaps various rules like electrostatic rules and principles that like create movements that like appear to be intelligent, but it's actually just following like basic rules. Like cellular automata can appear to be intelligent, but all they're actually doing is they have a set of pre-existing conditions that when they encounter one thing, they do this, and they encounter this, they do that. Like, and so they're following a set pattern of rules, and it's just the appearance of intelligence that people are trying to apply to it.
Yeah, that is a pretty notoriously difficult question in philosophy of science, is how to distinguish law-like behavior from intentional behavior. And that's what you're describing is to a third-party observer, without knowing ahead of time what they're looking at, they might appear identical. And it's very difficult to determine, is this intentional behavior or behavior that displays intentionality from a creature, or just law-like, pattern-like behavior. But it's just interesting, just immediately Jason Sands just suddenly had a story. Of course, it made him feel blissful and joy, and it's just amazing how easily he co-opts stuff.
It did make me think a little bit back to stuff like Persinger was doing, with the electromagnetic effects on the brain, and Dr. Greg Little had some speculative ideas about, ancient religious sites maybe having more hematite in the ground or something that would cause, effects from, but certainly not the same thing as a plasmoid being or whatever the claim there was. But
yeah, that's been some of the theories around some of like where you have some of these hot spots supposedly with like places like Marfa, Texas, Yakima, Washington, where people regularly see like these like glowing lights around the mountains. And one of the theories is that they've been earth lights that are caused by physical like phenomena on the ground that are generating these lights, and that that same geophysical phenomenon could be producing electric fields that are actually like modifying like how your brain interprets things and causing some of these sightings and stuff as well. I always found it interesting. One of the theories about meteors and why some people when they see a meteor sighting, they claim to hear it. Like they claim that they can hear a whistling, which should not be physically possible for a meteor that's, dozens of miles like away. Like you shouldn't be hearing anything. And one of the actual theories that's been put forward for that is that you're not physically hearing an audible sound. It's an electromagnetic field from the meteor supposedly making your brain create that sound inside your head. Now, I'm not sure how that would work again with great distances, but that's been a theory that's put forward as to why people hear sounds with meteors when you shouldn't hear a sound with a meteor. Like you actually shouldn't. But for as long as people haven't seen meteors, there's people that claim they hear them whistling like through the air.
Yeah.
So,
if that were true, I would expect people who are not looking at the meteor, don't even know there's a meteor there, to also hear it along with people looking at it. And I don't know how often that seems to happen.
yeah. I mean, there are quite a few UFO cases that kind of start out with people allegedly hearing a whistling sound and then going outside or going to a window and kind of trying to see what it is. And they see kind of like a bright light or something. But
Yeah,
I think-
when I had my UFO sighting back in the 90s, I had, at least in my memory today, I heard it first. I heard like a low humming first, and then turned around to see it.
That was interesting.
But yeah, I would tend to think that it's probably more like a psychosemantic kind of thing. Like people seeing something and imagining the sound possibly. But meteors can be really deceiving. I remember I saw one last year in the spring, and it was a green, fireball, and it was huge, and there were, probably, I don't know, a dozen pieces to this thing that were like breaking off, and it literally looked like it was an airplane crashing like a mile or two away. That's how close and big it looked,
What's isn't there actually a name for the effect of people will often describe it like a train car? I want to say there was even a name for.
yeah, it's like literally called the airship effect.
Okay.
It's where when a meteor or even space debris breaks up in these different parts, it gives the appearance of like an elongated cigar-shaped object with windows. It's because there's various, like when you see a meteor, there's various like visual effects, like contour illusions. And so where you think like when you see a black area and just some lights, like your brain will automatically assume like perhaps it's a solid object like in between there, but it's not. That's your contour illusion that your brain is putting in there. And so it's like it's a combination of like a contour illusion and various other effects that people interpret broken up meteors or space debris as like trains, cars, or cigar-shaped airship craft or things of that nature.
Was that what Childs and Whitted saw out of the airplane?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Charles Whitted was one of these sightings that like was put up as like the holy grail for a very long time. In fact, it was like what convinced people at Project Sign that like some of them that UFOs were extraterrestrial and the real deal and all that. And it wasn't really until there was a rocket reentry called Zon 4 in the 60s. Yeah. And they got copies of like sketches that witnesses did of this rocket reentry. And they were basically identical to the Charles Whitted sighting. Just countless sketches of people with these cigar-shaped crafts with windows, and like a little like a flame off the end of it. And so that's when they started to really realize that, hey, wait a second, these are probably space debris or meteors breaking up. And even researchers like Kevin Randall have, I think, came to the conclusion with like Charles Whitted that it was likely just a meteor sighting that these pilots saw outside their plane window.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was like Jeff said, they put up oftentimes as one of the best UFO cases ever, right? And
another one of those cases was and it was always put up in these top 10, like the top 10 UFO case documentary.
Yukon,
the big giant Yukon case in 1996, I think, in Canada, where people thought they saw this just huge mothership with all these lights, and like it turns out it was like a rocket, like or a satellite or something breaking up like over the area that people saw at the time. But for the longest time, that was put forward in ufology as a top 10 case, like one of the best of the best. And we see that a lot in UFOs, is that a lot of these former cases that were considered the cream of the crop, the best of the best, once we like start to learn more or get a little bit more information, they get explained. And what used to be considered best of the best is now, has a quite easily explained prosaic explanation.
Yeah, on the right there on the screen, you can see that was the recreation, I think, of what supposedly investigation had claimed. Of course, later we did find out that it was almost definitely, most likely, or whatever you want to say, something re-entering the atmosphere. But you go from something like this to, which just again speaks to the witness memory issue, right? And a lot of factors, but.
And with the Yukon case, right, there was a couple of other people that saw something supposedly like the same night. And like one or two of those sightings supposedly doesn't match up with the rocket reentry because it went in a different direction. But the thing you've got to understand is, again, eyewitness testimony is not that reliable. Every single time you have a major fireball sighting in the U.S., and there's an association that tracks fireball sightings and people's reports, every time you have one, maybe a large percentage of the people will get the general direction and whatnot right and the time right. But there's always outliers that think it was going in the different direction or that got the time wrong by 15 minutes. So there's always people that, just because they say they saw it go a different direction, so it couldn't be the rocket, doesn't mean it was really going the different direction. We know just historically from looking at mass sighting events with things like fireballs that you always have a subset of the population that gets those details wrong. They don't know which way they're looking. They don't know which way it actually went, or they get the time wrong.
Yeah, and you'd have to basically have to believe that wasn't the explanation. You'd have to think that there was this meteor or re-entering satellite or whatever, as well as a UFO in front of it or on the other side of the sky. You'd have to have both of those things going on at the same time to.
Yeah, that's the thing. What's more likely is that a UFO happened to show up at the exact same time that this rocket or satellite was breaking up over the area, or it was just the rocket breaking up over the area that people saw.
Yeah. One of the most striking examples of just how unreliable eyewitness testimony can be is the eyewitnesses of the Titanic who claimed that the ship did not split in half, while others claimed it did. How could anyone possibly miss something like that in such a shocking fashion? I was going to ask you, the sound of the meteors being described as a kind of whistling, is that a fairly commonly reported phenomena? Is that how it's very commonly reported by those who claim to hear it?
Yeah, it's common enough that they've written papers about it, and people have collected collections of people that report whistling and sounds from meteors. Yeah. You might expect like a sonic boom or something if it came in fast and exploded. But whistling or kind of like buzzing or like humming sounds, I think are fairly common. And I think one of the reasons people tried to tie that into like the kind of electromagnetic effects on the brain thing is that you can get kind of like humming kind of sounds by magnetically stimulating like the brain. But again, I'm not sure what the plausible physical mechanism would be from a meteor from great distance. And honestly, the same thing with people that have suggested that geophysical phenomenon in the earth are affecting the brain. The levels, the fields needed to do that kind of thing with the brain is so high that I don't see it like focusing, localizing like in somebody's brain to cause that kind of effect.
The reason I ask is because I initially thought, well, expectation can create the illusion of a sound. If you see something moving, and we almost always assume anything that's moving creates a sound, the expectation could potentially generate the illusion of a sound, but it wouldn't account for how consistent the sound seems to be from person to person, because different people might expect a sonic boom. Other people, I would never expect a whistling sound from a meteor. I would kind of associate it with something bigger sounding or lower frequency. So that makes me think that there might be something to it, because I doubt it's common enough that people are just hearing other people describe it and it's kind of being passed along that way. Yeah, but I don't know how that would work, because if it's strong enough to reach you, presumably whatever effect it's having on you would happen to anyone near you as well. And if that's not something that is found, I wonder why not.
Yeah. It's also interesting though that there's times where you should expect a sound when you're watching something, and people claim not to hear a sound. When many times I find it funny, somebody will post a UFO video and go like, it's completely silent. You can't hear, and you can literally like hear the plane or the helicopter. And it's like, I don't know what's going on in your head that it's completely silent to you, because I can hear it through the speaker on my laptop.
Yep.
Oh man. Well, seems like StreamYard seems to work pretty well. It looks like YouTube's running, so I guess we had a successful test. I appreciate you guys all jumping on. You guys have other stuff you want to hit on, or should we close out here? And I'd be up for like doing it every other week. You guys are certainly invited anytime you want to jump on. Maybe do it Friday every other week, and we can just kind of do an informal thing, or maybe have a topic of the day or not, whatever. But
yeah, I'm down.
I'd rather talk about this stuff with you guys than spaces.
Yeah, space. I can't handle that. That's the worst. I was thinking spaces are like one step above Xbox Live chat from 20, where people are screaming and profanity at each other all the time. But
I occasionally try to tune into a space just to like give them another chance to see if like I'm missing something, and just like every single time it's like 1 minute in, I'm like, nah, nope, bye. Like, because it's just people like yelling at each other half the time about just the dumbest crap. And it's like, I don't know how people have time for all that. Like, I have no problem talking with, intelligent people with good conversation like you guys. But like, spaces are a disaster. They remind me of like old party lines. Like back in my hacker days, we used to dial up with a TTY, the system for deaf people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could type it in with the modem and pretend we're deaf, because then they would bill the TTIY line for setting up a party line. And so then we'd have a party line that wasn't built to us, or we could pass the number around and people would call in and we'd talk it. But it was always such a disaster. Everybody trying to talk over each other. Half the people were like drunk or intoxicated and not making any sense. And it's just like, I don't know how people literally spend all day on them. There's people that will spend 16 hours in spaces a day. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Like, ugh.
Yeah, that's what I was about to mention. The time spent by some folks, is wow. Yeah. And I do think it certainly can get to a point for some folks where they that might be the entirety of their, if you want to call it, social contact with other people is through spaces or stuff like that.
If they spent a fraction of that time actually studying this freaking topic, like going or reading a book or something, they would be so much better off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these guys could read whole books in the time that they spend in a space in one day. Like, they could be geniuses by now on the UFO topic.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to close it out. Thanks, you guys, for jumping in.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you next time around. Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you guys.